Welcome back. At this time, I would like to introduce our next speaker, David Savage, who I have had the pleasure of knowing for 8 years. I met him at CAPS, which is the Calgary Association of Professional Speakers, for which Patricia was with me, and Martin, and lots of people from CAPS. David is going to speak to us on how Rotary's 7th Avenue of Service offers a powerful opportunity for us as clubs to provide new energy, innovation, and purpose towards our Rotary clubs. David was in the oil and gas industry for 30 years. For the last 15, he's been in private practice helping business leaders with capacity and accountability building. He has 7 books to his name and 45 podcasts. Please help me welcome David Savage.
Thank you, everyone. And what an amazing program. Inspiring. Hello, Rotarians, invited guests, interactors, Rotaractors, and future Rotarians. One of the amazing things that we just heard from our leaders in Canmore is all about the wonderful things that they're doing. The CO2 Easy app, that is amazing. That's world-class stuff. And after their talk, I went into the green room and said, congratulations, and I'm going to contradict you. Any of you that know me know I love conflict, and I believe that this is such a complex and increasingly complex time where we're driven to polarization and simple solutions. And my talk today will be about how do we navigate our way through? How do we learn more about environmental sustainability? And how do we celebrate and make a space for our next generation leaders, the leaders like the people from Cranbrook, those brave, courageous people, because this is their future, not only our future. So that's my intention today. I think my environmental sustainability Rotary Action Group covers people from, our young leaders are from Nakusp, Nelson, Spokane, Coeur d'Alene. And over the last year and a half that we've been running our green team, we call it, the young people, the high school students are now leading. And what we said is, please give us your wisdom. And what they told us back was, this is the first time people have listened to us. So that's what I want to share today. And that's my hope for Rotary International, for District 5360 and my District 5080. So let's begin. So, is Rotary a decade away from extinction? We all see the demographics. There's a lot of people that look like me. You know, some wisdom on our skulls, some wrinkles on our skin, and male. So I don't know if you can read the text on my t-shirt there. But for some reason, my son-in-law gave me that t-shirt a couple of years ago. Why are you laughing? And of course, that is the subject of, main comment and main theme of my talk today, is the better I lead, the more curious I am and the less certain I am. So when I told our leaders from Canmore that in fact I was going to contradict them, it was like a welcome. Okay, we can trust each other. We can debate. We can do some things. So, anybody know what a Romeo in Rotary is? I'm so glad you don't. It's really old men who eat out. Seems to be the way of the old paradigm. Let's get together for breakfast or lunch. and let's do important work together. Well, the world is a lot more challenging than we've ever seen it in so many ways. Meg from Shelterbox talked about rapid change as opposed to natural disasters, rapid disasters. Speed of change, increased complexity, and the polarization. You know, a lot of us have tried to turn off the media, turn off listening to politicians, because their information just confirms my narrow silo of information. And through Rotary Clubs, through Interact Clubs, through community conversations, we can actually learn together, collaborative learning. And I think that's a healthier way, a healthier progress, a healthier way to create our future. That's my granddaughter, Sarah, in the giant cedars. And a lot of the judgment has been, man, those young people, they're so passionate, but they're so naive. They just pick on one thing to get on and on and on and on. Well, sometimes, and sometimes they're passionately naive old people too. So let's come together, let's learn together. Let's find out some resources that not only Rotary, but our younger leaders have brought us. So that's kind of a scary picture. You may know that Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group was started about 2 years ago. About November 2020, I was asked by my district leadership, Dave, will you co-chair SRAG or the Green Team? And I said, you bet, because I believe that not only our environment needs to be protected, but by protecting our environment, our communities are healthier, our families are healthier, and guess what? Businesses that do that get more loyalty and are more successful. Their shareholders are more profitable. So, a friend of mine, former Minister of Energy and Mines in British Columbia, great Rotary leader out of Cranbrook, BC, where I live, he said to me in about November 2020, Dave, if you pick up this environmental torch, you're going to ruin Rotary. I said, well, thanks for the information, Bill. I'm moving on. And I guess the comment I'd like to make about that is, this is actually the new life of Rotary. This is the way our business, our corporations, our communities are demanding. That's the old style of thinking is, whatever's good for business is good for a community, and the environment is just going to have to tough it out. Well, our environment isn't as resilient as it used to be. There's too many people in the world. There's too many short-term one-off projects. And sometimes the projects that we do that we think we're helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions aren't really effective. I want to talk a little bit about some resources I'd offer you. Anybody read Adam Grant's Think Again? If you can just raise your hand. Yes, isn't that a fantastic book? And I'll give you some more resources, but just read that quote. Adam Grant, in his book that was published about 2 years ago and is one of my favorites, just says, think again. Rather than you and I getting into a debate as to who's more right and position, why don't I get underneath that with you and say, tell me more about that. Why is that important? What do you value? What are your principles around that? What's the future that we want to create? And we can learn together. So, an example of Think Again that really appeals to me, Adam Grant talks about debaters. And there's a debater that had 1,000 reasons that debater was right. And then there was another debater, these are world-class debaters, and another debater that had good questions. That's all they had. And before the debate began, the topic that the debater with 1,000 reasons why they were right, had about 60, 70% of the audience already in their camp. So it was a tough deal for the other guy that he just came with questions. Well, by the end of the debate, the other guy won. The one with 1,000 reasons was a computer. It had way more information than I could ever get into my brain. The other one was a human that said, let's engage, let's have that conversation, what's important? And then I'll give you 2 reasons why I think my proposal is correct. So don't overload them, don't push, don't create a lot of pressure and friction. In my first book, world-class business coach Marshall Goldsmith offered me this quote. And I think this is a reminder for Rotary International, for all of us to say, collaboration is the key. And as Rotarians, we know very well that we work well together. We do magic things. We listen to the funding, the projects that we do. And, you know, my own club of Cranbrook Sunrise, we have 44 members. And yet we've handed out $85,000 in grants in the Cranbrook area, just my club alone, in the last 12 months. Well, think again. When the pandemic started, the Kootenays Rotary Clubs got into online bingo. Online bingo, what the heck? That online bingo is shared by 20 clubs in the Kootenays, and just my club alone gets about $100,000 a year just out of bingo. So think about that. Think about that. Like 2 years ago, we wouldn't have known that. So I just want to keep reminding you, using the key words, critical thinking. I don't get to be right. Complexity is increasing. Change is speeding up. And through collaborative learning from you and I, meeting, getting together in a circle and saying, if I don't get to be right and you don't get to be right, where do we go together? And I'm pretty certain everybody in this room, all 350 of you and the 25 from around the world, you've had experiences where you were wrong, they were wrong, and the outcome was better. That's what I believe. And that's where I want to take people. You know, if 10 years ago sustainability was a nice to have, well, people want to talk about environmental protection, so let's do some greenwashing, whatever. That doesn't work in the last 5 years. If you are a public company and you want investment, you better have a strong and clear and accountable environmental, social, and governance policy and reporting. And you may not get the money. So change is happening. My friend Ken Cloak, who is the founder of Meat Eaters Beyond Borders International and wrote another brilliant book, Dance of the Opposites. Ken is again saying, let's dance with the opposite. Let's learn together. Let's stop, reconfirming our own biases. This is, conflict arises when the paradigm is changing. That's why I love conflict, because people that are in conflict with me are brave enough to say, Dave, you're not understanding what's really most important to me. Cheryl and I hiked to the crack between Cranbrook and Kimberley about a month ago. So I use that as a metaphor and an image of sometimes, whether it's this week or 2 years from now, that 100-foot mountainside and all those old cedars are going to plunge down into the St. Mary's River. That's change. That's a crack. Let's not try to get underneath that 100-foot mountainside and try to shore it up. No, there's a reason. There's a reason for change. Oftentimes, like collaboration, sustainability is really misused, overused. Nobody really knows what is that. Why would I want to have a future that's the same as now? That's not what sustainability is. Sustainability has 3 sides to it. In sustainability, business is just as important as environment, which is just as important as social. Let's take the bigger picture. About 2 years ago, as I've mentioned, Rotary International introduced the 7th area of focus, support the environment. And most of us understand my green team, District 5360, cannot support the environment unless you have businesses aligned with it, unless businesses that do that are more successful. So let's not focus just on one leg of the stool. So here's the part where our brilliant leaders from Canmore, I'm going to contradict. And this is in the view of critical thinking. This is where we say, okay, if we really want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, Rotary International partners with Project Drawdown. You can go on the net and access Project Drawdown. This is credible global information. A year ago, Mount Baker High Green Club, Environment Club in Cranbrook, I just couldn't convince them. They thought, all we have to do is plant 12 trees at Idlewild Park. And I said, no, it's not about trees. Has anybody here been in British Columbia? Anybody notice trees? And for those of us that live there, the rapid disasters of forest fires, we are purposefully deforesting around our populations. So that is for Cranbrook. Many areas of the world, yes, of course. Africa, yes, of course. Cranbrook, no. Trees aren't the answer for us. If you look at this slide, and again, it's a public resource, if you want to make the most positive impact globally on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, it's not about planting trees. Volvo, Tesla, Ford, Hyundai, they've got us all convinced that our next vehicle is going to be an electric vehicle. Nope. Doesn't barely fit 10% of educating girls, family planning. That's where the magic is, educating girls. It's not spending $100,000. My cousin in Vancouver only invests in sustainable companies. She just bought herself a $100,000 BMW electric iX. And I said, well, that's nice. Where'd the batteries come? What's the full cycle emission cycle? What's the sustainability of the life cycle of that $100,000 BMW? BMW is beautiful because they're mostly reusable. But spending $100,000 on a new vehicle that's shipped from Germany and mined from minerals in Peru and China, think again. The other thing I want to point out is, wind turbines, okay. I used to do a lot of conflict resolution around oil and gas. I used to be an oil and gas founder, builder, seller. And then 20 years ago, I got into all sorts of conflict resolution, trying to get people to collaborate and understand and build better. Well, guess what? There's as much conflict about wind farms near ranchers as there is ever on oil and gas. So it's not the thing, it's the, I need to be heard. Well, I don't know if any of you are fans of Fareed Zakaria. I am. This is what he showed about 10 days ago. Wind turbines. Where do they get the minerals for those things? Well, they get the steel from mining metallurgical coal in the Elk Valley and elsewhere. Where do they get the rest of it? We're supposed to be off fossil fuels. 3 years ago, I'm an advisor of the Canadian Energy and Climate Nexus, so we want to inform people about energy transition, thoughtful, intentional. So there's another resource, is thececn.ca. And 4 years ago, we couldn't get an intelligent conversation about energy transition because so many people, including some politicians, wanted to stop the fossil fuel industry, stop pipelines. Well, guess what? In the last couple of months, that's changed. Now we want energy security. I was helping San Luis Obispo deal with the Diablo Canyon nuclear reactor in Southern California. 40-year-old nuclear reactor just not a place that you want to build a nuclear reactor 40 years ago. And we were trying to get an energy transition conversation going. Where do we want to go? Well, let's work back. How do we put in the tax, et cetera? And then Pacific Gas and Electric said, geez, we're only going to invest in renewables from now on. And the whole initiative died. A year later, I went back and they said, well, don't you realize nuclear is a renewable? No, I didn't. Then Pacific Gas and Electric went bankrupt, and all those people that resisted the energy transition conversation were all of a sudden the pariahs. And a couple of weeks ago, my friends down in California told me, guess what, Dave? The governor of California wants to extend Diablo Canyon for another 10 years because it supplies California 10% of our electricity. It's just like going from pothole to pothole. So, and I might say, look at lithium, look at some of the resources there. A company by the name of E3 Minerals out of Calgary for the last 5 years has been working on recovering lithium from abandoned deep oil wells. So circulating the old water out of old oil and gas wells and capturing the lithium. So Alberta can become one of the major producers of batteries in the world because of old oil and gas wells. That's innovation. That's critical thinking. That's not oil and gas is bad. I want to, I know I am running out of time, but I just want to talk about promoting diversity and building membership in Rotary. This is really the topic that I really want to pursue here is, yes, there's lots of wonderful resources that I can offer to you. We've agreed with Luke and his students that we will collaborate between our SRAG and the Canmore group. Brilliant ideas, it's their shared future. The big thing for Rotary International, for Cochrane, for Cranbrook and others, is once we allow the young leaders, the brilliant leaders who are passionate, and support them with resources, friendship, platforms, and learning from them, our Rotary is renewed. Every meeting that we have this young person.
Have you ever thought about the world you're leaving behind? About the floods, the fires, and the droughts, and all the coal that's behind. Do you ever envision the earth you're giving?
Thank you, Brian. That worked out really well. When I did that, he paid attention. Thank you.
Just like Aretha.
Yeah, there he goes. So I've obviously talked too much, but I am passionate about these things. This is another metaphor. This was the old rail line that took lead zinc from the Sullivan mine in Kimberley down to the smelter in Trail. That railroad was abandoned about 30 years ago. About 12 years ago, we repurposed that to be the North Star Trail, which is one of the best cycling trails in the world because we got the Rocky Mountains, Fisher Peak, the steeples right there. And what we found is we've used this as a metaphor for Rotary. So just imagine that your club is not a club. Imagine that your club is actually a global network. And imagine that your club is the planet Earth. I want to thank you for your time, and I welcome critical conversations, people telling me I'm wrong, because I love that. And I think there's brilliant opportunities for us to deal with complexity and open up the doors to renew, refresh, and energize the brilliant young people like we saw before me today from Canmore. Thank you.
So, David, you weren't wrong, but you were long. So we don't have quite 9 minutes for questions, but we do have time for a couple questions. And I learned when we had the break that if you do not ask the question with a mic, the live stream people do not hear it. Furthermore, the people up there in the expensive balcony, they can't hear it either. So please use a mic if you have a question. We have 2 now roaming. One will stay stationary and Terry will roam.
Hi, Kimberly Davis. I'm the president of the Rotary Club of Lethbridge downtown. And I just want to quote Stephen Covey. And for those of you who don't know who that is, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he says, change moves at the speed of trust. And I just want to ask you, and I respect you as a mediator, David, how do we form trust? You know, how do we stop seeing somebody like myself, young, female, as other? You know, I'm a Rotarian, I'm the president of my club. You don't need to invite me and I'm here.
You went away from the mic before I could ask you, how do you create trust? And I think you already know, it takes time, because we take a lot of time destroying our trust, destroying, polarizing, breaking up. And the environment, you know, those damn environmentalists, those greenies, they're gonna ruin our business. It's just ongoing conversation. So yes, we're celebrating having our 350 people here today. And yes, you know, when it comes to the environmental sustainability and our young leaders from the Cusp and Nelson and Spokane, we would love to connect with your Rotary Club and have this conversation, because building the trust of the next generation, as I think is one of our most important things to do as a grandparent, as a parent, as a Rotarian, as a president, to say, come on in, you are welcome here. So I think I'm ready to be challenged on this, Stephen, but I think it's just time and respect. Respect that everyone in this room has your perspective, your wisdom, and we need to just ask, 10 times more questions than we project our opinions. So is that a start? Okay, thank you.
Hello, David. It's Henry with Fish Creek Rotary, as I spoke earlier. And hello, David. We've worked together many, many years ago in the oil and gas business. I'm a career oil and gas person. Yeah. And I'm really so refreshed and glad to hear there's an opening for intelligent talk on all sides about a healthy way to transition. We all want to transition. I have lots of grandchildren as well, and I want a healthier world for them. But I also want to make sure that my children can make a good living and we can survive properly. So finally, we've been so radicalized, and it's nice to make an effort to start to have a really good conversation about how to do this right for the sake of all of us. And Rotary is a great vehicle. We're well connected throughout the world, and we got leaders throughout our organization. So that's something, be interested to see how that might evolve, where we can be part of that intelligent, progressive change. Yeah. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Henry. Thanks for saying hello again. So as a person that my father was at some of the initial discoveries in oil and gas in 1948, and I spent a lot of my career and did very well. Well, sometimes I did really well, sometimes I didn't. But here we are, where we witnessed 2 things in the cattle industry and in the oil and gas industry of being shamed. No, I really like some good beef and some good chicken. I'm not yet convinced that I really want to buy that electric car. But if Henry, I'm kind of spinning off to make a point I didn't have time to make because I was speaking too much and not listening.
which you still don't have time to make, but go ahead.
Thank you. But with my green team, in the Pacific Northwest, we said, SRAG Big West, which is the west coast of North America, SRAG globally, we've kind of tuned them out because we want to act local. And our focus now, like the Canmore students, is, okay, how do I measure my emissions? How do I measure my waste? And a lot of the focus that my green team and the other leaders is on food waste. As you know, 40 to 50% of our food is wasted. So it's not only food recovery and food banks, it's also, really delighted with the conference today when I see most everything is compostable. Really delighted when I can challenge my club, and maybe this is a challenge for all of your clubs going back, is to say, okay, when you go to your weekly meetings, whether it's lunch, dinner, breakfast, whatever, or cocktails, where's that food come from? And what's left over, where does it go? Simple questions that, yes, it might make me feel better, but more importantly, it builds the conversation away from the former energy and mines guy saying this is going to kill us, destroy us as Rotarians, and actually get the restaurants, the hotels, the people in our family talking about, what about food waste? What do I do to treat my waste? What am I losing? So what am I? I'm talking too much again. Next question.
Well, it was interesting because when Henry spoke, I thought, oh, he didn't ask a question, so this will be quick. This is the last question.
Actually, get two, just two.
Who's the MC, Terry?
I'll make mine quick. Amba Westich. My name is Holy Song Natu Yingsten. Also, I'm known as Diana Frost with the Honoring Indigenous Peoples Committee. I'm glad you were talking about food waste. I also wanted to ask you the impact of eating less meat in our diet on environmental sustainability.
Thank you, and I just take us back to Project Drawdown. I expect the presentations will be available. Just go to Project Drawdown, and yes, eating a more plant-rich diet is very significant for us. So globally, you bet. So what does that mean for Cheryl and I? Yes, less meat. Part of that is because it's so damn expensive now. But part of it is to say, okay, as I age, we want to retain our health. We want to build our resilience, stay active in the Rocky Mountains. So I think while I can't see myself being an anti-beef, because I really like beef, I have made the decision over the last few years to say, how about less of that? And more importantly, less food overall.
Okay, Anita, last question.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Anita from Cochrane. I just wanted to challenge your answer to the first question. We don't have time. As someone who has self-diagnosed myself with climate anxiety, and in the next 10 years we have island nations that will be underwater. I have a child who will not be able to go outside during the summer because of the risk of skin cancer from UV radiation. So I just ask you, if time isn't the answer, which I agree is not the answer, what else is?
Thank you. So for many of us, time is imminent. We're seeing rapid disasters in the Arctic with flooding right now, and I really understand that. All I can do is engage with you later today, anytime you can, to learn more about what's that like. My pushback is there's too many people whose interests are served by creating anxiety. So I'd rather you and I have a conversation as to what can you and I do together, what can our Rotary Clubs do together to deal with what we can deal with and get away from the cellars of anxiety. So I agree with the time. It varies, varies for you, varies for people in Ukraine, and all I can do is respect your time and ask you to connect.
much.
Thank you.
Well, I teased David about the time. It's clear you're very passionate about this. And your background and your history and what you bring to bear to this topic is very, very worth hearing. So we thank you very, very much for speaking today.
Thank you all.
David's shelter box tent was sponsored by our very own Dr. Tom Wilk at Mountain View Optometry.